Hello, Team Malibu. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to use a microphone as we have a small turnout tonight so far, so it's going to seem insane that I'm using a microphone. But we are recording this on Zoom, or we're going to be shortly. So for my AV friend in the back, if you can make sure you've hit the record button on Zoom, that would be all right. I got a thumbs up. That's awesome. We have a small. Last time we did this meeting, we had over 100 people here. We actually were filling up the seats back there. We had spillover. It was awesome. Tonight, we aren't gifted with the benefit of crowd. So I would love for everybody to come to this table right here in the middle, please, because we really are what conversation, but it's hard to have conversation when you're all sitting at a table by yourselves. And one of my great joys of doing this work at Trippepi Smith is having total strangers meet each other and engage in discourse and civil engagement, which is, I was just having a lovely conversation about that with one of our attendees this evening. I'll briefly introduce myself too. My name is Ryder Smith. I work at a firm called Trippepi Smith. We have been engaged by the city and the city council with a deep commitment to doing extensive public engagement and outreach work around the Malibu lands and working to get people involved in this project. I have a few slides that will talk about some of our work so far and then map out the plan ahead. Alexis, I might just have you briefly introduce other VIPs in the room if you don't mind. So this is Alexis Brown. She's the Deputy City Manager of the city.
I think everybody is familiar, but hello, nice everyone to see you again. I do want to introduce my city manager, Steve McCleary, and Mayor Pro Tem Riggins, and Councilmember Grisanti. We also have a Parks and Rec Commissioner, Skolpammer, in the room.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for coming out. So I'm going to just do a brief PowerPoint deck, and then we're going to throw it to conversation at the table and really try to stay out of the way and let the citizens have discussion among themselves about prioritization. I'll explain the exercise we're going to go through tonight, and then when we're done with that, we'll put it up on the board. Just given the smaller turnout this evening, I expect we'll probably be out of here in about an hour or so would be my guess, but we'll stay here to answer your questions as long as we need to. So first, just a brief introduction, which you've gone through. We'll talk about phase 1 results and then our phase 2 results. Then we're going to get into our breakout group activity, have a group discussion, and then go to Q&A and wrap it up. So first of all, we're currently in phase 2 right now of the plan. That's going to run from August until October. We're going to be collecting additional specific feedback about what category or type of programming we'd like to see on each one of these properties. And then in October, we anticipate the City Council will be reviewing that feedback received and then making next steps. And that's all up to the City Council, and what date that will be, that is to be determined. I would love to, once we get going to the program, I'll have you join this table. Awesome. So we're really looking at some work that's going to start, that's going to continue now in our phase 2 through up until that time in October. Our goal as Trippepi Smith is to provide an extensive community feedback report to the benefit of the City Council. Public will have access to that as well. And then they can use that publicly gathered feedback and information to inform their overall decision-making process about what to do with the lands. Ultimately, how the lands are programmed is a City Council decision to be made. And our job is to make sure they get as much access to public input in that process. And of course, the public will have ample opportunity at that point in time in the discussions with City Council to provide further feedback directly to City Council about choices to be made. So tonight's goal is to really focus first on sharing the feedback from our phase 1 effort that we've been through, and then to talk specifically about categories of types of programming to have at each one of these 5 pieces of land. Just a brief summary about phase 1. So we collected general feedback from all types of community members. Part of our community outreach plan was to include all stakeholders. So first and foremost, that was residents of the community, certainly. And it was also inclusive of business owners in the community, people who work in the community, and other stakeholders involved in the community. Number 2, we then received a bunch of feedback, direct feedback. So we had the benefit of people filling out our online web form. We had the benefit of a flash vote survey tool to go out and proactively reach people and try to bring them in with some decision-making kind of scientifically curated data that we could cross-tabulate. We also had extensive participation in a series of 3 community meetings that we did, plus some pop-up events to gather additional feedback. I think we ended up with certainly well over 100 participants, approaching 200 participants between all the different community meetings that we had, where we had some really great, robust table-side conversations, and then shared our idea charts that have all been documented and shared on the website. And I hope that one theme you're seeing from our effort is if you go on the Malibu Lands website, you'll see an extensive amount of documentation showcasing all the information that's been provided from the public on this process, so it's completely transparent to everybody in the community and all of our stakeholders. Based upon that feedback and digesting all that content, which was quite extensive, and based upon my conversations with city staff, the numbers you're seeing here is actually pretty robust community engagement feedback compared to a lot of other projects that have happened in the city. So there's a lot of community passion on this issue. Based upon that, we came up with kind of 10 categories that made sense to kind of encapsulate the various ideas that were surfaced, right? So you may see something like commercial, and we provide a list of those categories that you're going to see here. They're in alphabetical order, with the exception of other at the bottom. But the point was, and as you can see, commercial could be parking, business development. There was a suggestion of a vertical takeoff port that would allow people to take off in a self-automated drone and fly them to various points in LA and come back to Malibu. Very innovative, like it hadn't even crossed my mind, but theoretically it would be a commercial use, so it's categorized within that. We came up with these various categories, and our goal tonight is to now start kind of putting you in the position of the same challenges that your city council is going to face, which is how do I start making trade-offs and decisions? Phase one was all about ideas, just shoot for the stars. Phase two is about let's get pragmatic now and think what can actually take place on each one of the pieces of property, either given zoning restrictions, land restrictions, or just what makes sense from programming relative to location in the city. So tonight we'll focus on picking prioritization on each of these properties and making your suggestions based upon dialogue and hopefully compromise that comes up at the group of 10 at the table. As I mentioned, our feedback is going to focus on those 10 categories and these 5 pieces of property that we've been discussing all along the Malibu lands. There are technical review findings that inform what some of the at least preliminary restrictions may be about what can be done on some of these properties. So we're briefly just going to touch on each one of these, and I can revisit these as we're in our breakout session for our conversation. So on the chili cook-off property, technically all categories are possible. It's a relatively large, robust piece of land, and there are 100 parking spaces required per an agreement with LA Metro that need to be available in some way, shape, or form on that property. And then this is, I asked our team to beef these up with some aerial visuals as well to go along with the Google map. So that's the first chili cook-off property. And then these are organized 1 through 5, and then you should see that correlating hopefully along here with the same idea of 1 through 5. So the second one is the triangle property. These 4 categories are technically available for the triangle property itself. It's a much smaller property, only at 1.11 acres, and it also has a requirement for 100 parking spaces per an agreement with LA Metro. And that's our aerial view, so just down the hill from us where we stand. Heather Cliff is our third property, land 3. So all categories are deemed technically feasible within this, with certain environmental considerations that must be considered. There are 19 acres, so also a very large piece of property. This one additionally does require approximately 200 spaces. So you're going to see a theme here, particularly with the 3 properties we've acquired from LA Metro, where there's going to be these parking space requirements that we have to somehow accommodate. Many have ideated on, can that be done through underground parking or other solutions? I believe the answer is yes, within restrictions about geological issues and whatnot. And obviously there's major cost considerations for something like that, but it's come up in the conversations and ideas. There's a beautiful overhead satellite image of that Heather Cliff property. And then the second to last property, all categories are technically feasible, very large piece of property, right? So 30 acres now with tremendous opportunity for that. But located further up off the coastline, and there's a lovely overhead on that particular property. I believe tomorrow we're out actually at an event that's going to be there. We're going to have a pop-up event taking additional community feedback proximate to this piece of property. And then last is La Paz. This has a limited set of categories that are currently technically feasible: open space, grass sport field, and other depending upon use. Much smaller property, right? And you can also just get a real sense of limitations or diversity in size here between just 2.3 acres here versus nearly 30 for land piece 4. So, and here's a lovely overhead on that one. And of course, we'll make this PowerPoint available to everybody. I want to go through it here because it's also on Zoom, so our folks on Zoom can make sure that they can see this and have contributed to the conversation. We can rotate back and forth on these properties as necessary. We obviously have all of them lit up here in the front of the room as well, so you have a visual on them. All right, so on to the group activity. So what we would like to do is, as we try to emphasize in the first phase one, we want people to talk to people. And I don't want this to be me talking at you. So the goal is to have you sit around the table and have a conversation. I'd like you to pick a table scribe. You can use your own form of democracy. And pick a table scribe and then start working through each property and talking about your categories that you think would make the most sense and why. And then if you can all come to agreement on one particular category that makes the absolute most sense for that property, great. If you have up to 3 ideas, okay. But if you could limit it to 3, so we really have to make some trade-offs and decisions, and you contemplate that across all 5 properties, that would be super helpful for the kind of feedback we're looking for to really understand prioritization among a subset of interested and diverse individuals within Malibu. We have a matrix piece of paper on your, so first of all, we have the technical information on each property is located on your table as well, so you have access to that, and we have plenty of these given the crowd size tonight, so you can each have one of those. And then we also have a matrix document somewhere. Where'd my matrix go? Yeah, that's the matrix. So that matrix document is where you can then put an X in the categories that you would want to see, and try to limit your X's to 3 in the crosstab. So property number and then the categories that you would like to see, and make some selections. And the goal is for you to, as a team, agree what those would be and then make those selections. And then we can, especially given tonight with our smaller crowd, I'd love to kind of have you guys report out and share your ideas about why those made sense to you from your perspective and what maybe you learned from each other through that process. Does this make sense, what I'm asking you to do? Okay, perfect. Yes. Let me actually give you a mic so that, or let me hold a mic next to you so I can make sure my, whoa, excuse me, Zigzag.
I was under the impression that we had to have a certain number of parking spots in general, not that each number of parking spots was tied to each property. When you guys wrote that out, it looks like 100 for here and 200 for there and kind of nothing for anywhere else, and I'm confused.
Okay, that probably confusion is my fault, so let me have Alexis jump in real quick with that.
No problem. So the 3 lots that we're talking about, just to recap, is the Chili Cook-Off Triangle and Heathercliff, because they were purchased, or a portion of the monies used to purchase are tied to Measure R and Measure M monies with LA Metro. If you divide up the amount, which is 4.1 acres total that needs to be for public parking, that's what it comes out to generally on each lot. So it can be consolidated or moved around for 3, but if you divide it up evenly for each lot, you're looking at that as a minimum.
So just to clarify for those at home, the question is how many we need to come up with 4.2 acres of land that's dedicated to parking, which should yield approximately 400 parking spots. It has to be built up or made available through those 3 different properties.
We can buy ourselves out of these agreements if we want to.
I guess I'll fact check that. Is that okay? I guess we don't know that for certain, and we don't have that policy direction yet. All right. Yeah, sorry, another question.
Percentage for handicap.
Yeah, I would presume it would have various requirements for types of parking and things of that nature as well. And we can bring more clarity to that in some of our materials. Do you have a question?
Yes. And so when you talk about us being contracted with LA Metro, define LA Metro?
Oh, so that's the regional transit agency for LA Metro, and we acquired these properties from LA Metro because they had other visions for I assume they were partly park and ride lots. Thank you. Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Is public transportation anywhere in this? Meaning like shuttles, parking, buses, electric kinds of?
I think I need to defer to Alexis to answer that particular question. Sorry, Alex. Keep making you get out of your chair. Yeah, probably better.
So it's a possible use. The funds used in the parking spaces we're talking about are available for public parking. So it's the council's consideration that it could involve some sort of transportation center or bus stops a part of that, but that's all up to the council. How should the use be determined of where that would actually land on any of those lots?
Great question. All right. Don't run, Alexis.
Hi, has any thought been given to, since there's going to be a need for parking for the low to moderate income housing element, that there be a trade-off somewhere for that, and maybe that can be moved farther west where there's more flat space and no ESHA and blue line streams and stuff where it's anticipated going? Has that been a consideration at all?
So I think that is a great question, one, but I think that's a perfect launch into what you're talking about here on your table. So it is something that we do need to consider. It's part of the trade-offs that Ryder had mentioned earlier. So I do think it's something that needs to be brought before the council for conversation and weighed in for public input. But that is definitely something to look at. Obviously, a couple of these lots, the zoning of which is available on our community lands website, so you could see, but anything that's identified in our housing element, such as residential zoning, which would be somewhat of Trancas, for example, that can be considered with that. But overall, that needs to be a topic of discussion for this phase 2 of the outreach and gathering the information.
Great question. And thank you, Alexis, for making the point. It's a perfect point of kind of the trade-offs and discussion to be had at the table about how to use some of that land. Okay, so we're welcome to the party, team. Do you want to come join us for the conversation up here? I can get you caught up to speed, I promise. We're just about to break out into session. Okay. Well, with that, obviously, if you have other questions that come up, please flag us down. As you can see, you're more likely to get a better answer out of Alexis than me, which makes total sense. But I'll do my best to be helpful as well. I would encourage discourse. Nominate your table scribe, and then we'd like to take. We'll take as long as we need to, up to 40 minutes. But I can't imagine it's going to take 40 minutes for you guys to have conversation about this. And we'll come back and revisit. And so for the folks that are on Zoom, you're going to be doing the same exercise with Sydney. Sydney, I'm not sure if you can get piped in to us, but were there any questions from anybody online? Are we okay? We're okay? Okay, no questions online. All right, break out to start having your conversation. Thank you, guys. My AV guy, we're good? All right. People on Zoom can hear me now? Devin? Can people on Zoom hear me? All right. And we need to get you a microphone because you have to ask questions that Zoom asked, and probably these are Alexis answers if I had to guess. I want to thank this group. I need to go on the record while we're recording this to thank this group for your compromise and agreement and discussion and rigorous debate. I appreciate you coming to some conclusions tonight. It was invigorating and really rewarding, frankly. Like, you don't see enough of this in our society, and you just made America proud tonight. Good job, guys. Our discussion you had was not recorded here. No, you need the freedom of converse. I can't comment on the other matter. Okay, so Devin, do you have questions that were submitted on Zoom? It'll get on in a second. It takes a couple seconds.
Hello.
There you go.
Perfect. Okay, let me pull those up. We had a couple questions. So the first one is, if a private company or party would want to partner with the city on developing a particular use, would that expedite the development process? Would the city be interested in doing that?
So the city has very specific development processes. That's more of a policy question in terms of entering into any sort of public-private partnership. Those are known as P3 type developments. We don't have any sort of indication that would be direction from the council to do so, but I can say it wouldn't expedite anything. Obviously, we're in a full coastal zone. We would be following the plans and procedures and processes that would require. So that's kind of the answer on that.
Perfect. And we have one other question. Where would the chili cook-off event move if that place was developed?
Fair question. We would have to really look at that. We would have to see what logistically is needed to support. any kind of movement of that event. Obviously, that's a signature event Malibu is known for. It's got, you know, as far as taking place there, so there would be a lot of consideration. So I don't know off a hand, or to say that any of these lots could even accommodate that for the support amenities that would be necessary to accomplish that. So it would have to be a very robust conversation if that direction was given by the council in order to develop that lot.
Perfect. Thank you. Those were the 2 questions. And then, Ryder, should we go into questions or should we go on to what's highlighted for like each land?
Oh, yeah. So I think what would be best is if you could, do you have those per property?
Yes. we
So
do.
I think for the purposes, let me have you put those on Post-it notes or somehow document it, and then I'll share it with our group here so they can benefit from that. Meanwhile, I'm gonna share your group's consensus that you all work towards. And to be fair, not every person at the table agreed with everything that was built, but that's the nature of give and take of consensus building. So I see 2, 3. So I'm guessing land 1 is the one here at the top, right, Scribe? Yes. Okay. So so on land location 1, which is currently known as Chili Cook-Off Lot, there was agreement to put a cultural arts center with a senior center attachment, which I guess technically might qualify as other potentially, but that was the vision for that. So a very specific, narrow, and that was partly to preserve space and make it visually stunning. For land 2 on the triangle, there was this agreement to put a parking, make it a parking lot, and make it. It's already, I think the consensus was, it's already a pretty difficult and not particularly attractive piece of property. So let's just bite the bullet, so to speak, on that and make that the parking lot with a potential helipad. It is noted, right, so noted also there's staging for fire events there too. That would also be important. So we'd have to have that accommodated on the helipad. And then on land 3, we had discussion. This is where we got particularly aggressive for our Parks and Rec programming. So this was pool, community center, ballpark, grass sport fields, and an experienced library were all identified. So that was not only just grass fields, but also the sports court. So this is, the Heathercliff lot was really identified by the group as consensus of where we want all of our sports activity, youth-focused programming being available. On space 4 here, this was all, there was agreement pretty quickly that this should remain open land and preserved as open land within the definition that we have for our category up there, which includes some very limited programming, pathways, trails, community gardens. And then finally was on La Paz, which was identified as being a parking lot, and dog park would be the optimal use for that particular property. And there was pretty quick consensus on that, noting that there would have to be a hammerhead turnaround to accommodate fire. Yep. Okay. Thank you. And then Devin, you're documenting what our friends on Zoom had. So this will be very interesting now for our group. Oh, we already got stickers up. Great. So you're the purples? All right. So for my folks in the room here, if I could grab your attention real quick. I just want to get your attention. If I could get your guys' attention real quick. I just want you to benefit from what the Zoom folks said, since they listened to what you all had to share. I think it's important to reciprocate. So our folks on Zoom were, for Chili Cook-Offs, we're looking for a pool and sport courts to be developed there. For the triangle lot, they suggested grass field open space. So pretty opposite, frankly, from the parking one. But there was noted on the grass fields, depending on the parking spaces that are needed to go there. For the Heathercliff lot, this was the one that group had picked to be left open space and undeveloped. So there's 4 people online. So we're just looking, I think, 4 to 7. We have a number. People are allowed to have diverse opinions. We're trying to accommodate diverse opinions on it. Sure. And then on the Troncas location, there were multiple uses based on land size, so they felt like it was a big property. One consensus was golf course and sports courts on the Troncas. And then last but not least was La Paz, where also the consensus was for open space on La Paz as well. So clearly different viewpoints from a different audience, which is to be expected. We had diversity of thoughts on the group we had here, and this is not surprising given all the various feedback we've had in the course of our engagement process so far and what we've heard from folks. Thank you, Alexis, for getting these additional stickers up. We'll be taking photos of all this feedback and making it available so that folks know what was shared as ideas as part of tonight's exercise, and we'll be continuing to do that as we go forward. We already had one open pop-up event already where this was discussed, and we have the documentation of those particular events. I was trying to share with you all. Okay, so I just want to bring us to a conclusion here. So we answered a lot of questions already in the course of this, and we did the Q&A already. So first question would just be, are there any additional questions that came through on Zoom? Okay. Were there any additional questions that we need to answer tonight for you all? Questions? Okay, great. So we are still just now kicking off our phase 2 engagement process. We have 2 additional pop-up events coming up, one tomorrow, and then one 7 days later on the next Friday. We'll be at the Troncas Market and then at the Malibu Chili Cook-Off spaces doing our events. So we welcome people to show up those. Pop-ups mean we just are taking feedback without any organized, facilitated conversation and discussion. Our next scheduled community meeting is actually going to be in the great outdoors on this beautiful piece of property here. So please come join us. It'll be a sunset community conversation. Yes, sir. Yeah, so the pop-up event is on Tracus Market, but the actual community meeting we're going to be doing is going to be on the lot. So that should be exciting because I've never done one at sunset overlooking the ocean. That should be beautiful. And what's that? Oh, the stuff for the, no, I don't think so. And then the last meeting will be right down the street here or right down the hill at the Chili Cook-Off lot. Where we're going to be meeting on September 17th at 10 a.m. in the morning for our conversation. And obviously, we're not going to have the benefit of PowerPoint or Zoom. Those will just be community conversations with some handouts and materials and conversations we're going to have there. Should prove very exciting and interesting to get done. All right. With that, I thank you guys for the robust conversation. I hope this... Yes?
Does Caltrans have anything to do with these conversations, or are we all doing this in a silo just for an exercise? Are we talking to other agencies about what is possible?
So I'll let Alexis speak to some of that, but understand that we already live in a coastal zone, so we can plan a lot, but we always have our good friends at the Coastal Commission involved in some of those discussions and issues. And then we're obviously have a state highway running through our property, but that said,
I think, Ryder, you answered it great. So as far as this stage in the process and the outreach, this is very focused on the identified community stakeholders that Ryder had mentioned earlier that were a part of. We have the residents, we have the local business owners and employees of those, and then we have a few others that were just identified as part of the community. In terms of the other jurisdictions, for example, county, Caltrans, coastal, all of those will be a part of the conversation, but this is focused on the amenities that the community is looking for on these lots because these are city-owned lands and as to what that looks like and the overall vision for the city, and that'll be a conversation for council. When we involve the other jurisdictions, it'll be dependent on jurisdictional authority, encroachments, things like that. Obviously, whatever depends on the development. If there is development, I say that, on any of these parcels, then we'll involve that jurisdiction so we can make sure that we have a cohesive approach to that.
Yeah, traffic studies, all those studies are way too early, and it'd be hard for us to kind of help the public ideate at this point in time.
Yeah, just really quick. I just want to touch on something, Halen, that gives a great opportunity to kind of talk next steps, because we've mentioned this in phase 1, that this is truly, the first step, because after this comes the council discussion, the weighing of options and direction to staff as to what we do next. But part of that goes into the master planning, and that gets into more of, well, if we're considering putting a ballpark or pool or what have you on Heathercliff, that's going to take into account all the things that you mentioned, traffic study, trends, whatever that looks like. And so that'll be a part of that conversation, but it's too early for that part yet. But those are important points for us to keep in mind as we weigh the options.
Okay. Did you have another question? So the question is, was this use counted in the phase 1 sewer? Right, so I guess there's questions about sewer capacity. I assume that would actually be part of the master planning and study work that we're talking about. Yeah, so that would have to come later. Do you have a question?
When you said at the beginning, after local businesses had an input in the survey, you said other stakeholders. Who are they?
So I was just referring to, I guess I was doing a catch-all of stakeholders of people that have an interest in the community, right? So we identified local businesses, people who work here. Well, we have a mix of folks, but I will say our feedback forms, like on our website, you indicate whether or not you're a Malibu resident. Obviously, that's self-selection in terms of people identifying that, but we have a very high rate of resident identified submission on that. And on our survey, Flashlight survey tool, we can filter that for validated Malibu addresses for those that filled out that data set. And so we can look at that in particular to identify Malibu specific opinions on those things. I would also just observe that this is, to be fair, it is a general challenge, especially today in our Zoom world. I mean, we could be doing redistricting programming and we have people in China giving us feedback about what the district should look like, right? So, but I appreciate everybody's feedback here tonight, certainly. All right, with that, we're gonna, just a reminder, this Malibu Lands website, Community Lands website is super active. Our team is up there pretty much every day updating with information. All this content is gonna be on there. Anything that we've done in the past is gonna be on there. It's all very transparent and available. Please tell your friends to get involved, check it out, learn more. Sign up for our email address to keep getting the emails to stay informed. Tell your friends to come out to our future meetings. And with that, that's a wrap. Thank you very much for coming out tonight.